Truly, Nigeria's foundation built on falsehood hinders its progress and stability. And according to the scriptures, if the foundations are destroyed, what can the righteous do? In this case, the righteous must now decommission the 1999 Constitution. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Tony Nadi, Nina's spokesman, who will discuss 1999 Constitution is victory charter from 1967 to 1970 genocide and must now be decommissioned to end that war. In light of the key points raised during the broadcast we just listened to. Sir, please, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. Welcome, everybody. The purpose of these weekly town hall meetings is to illuminate the pathway to the exit from bondage. Yes, we put a roadmap on the table since 2020, defining our current bearings. That's where are we now? Why are things the way they are in Nigeria? Why is the system in such dysfunction? Why is a country so endowed, so heavily endowed, material, natural, human resources, lagging behind the rest of the world on everything good? Why are the peoples of Nigeria living in such a terrible conditions, such that they've become the poverty capital of the world? And so the proposition of Nina's was to identify exactly what this problem is, to identify what the solution could be. Potent solution that will deliver result that everybody can see. Then to also identify the mechanism of working that solution in terms of who will do what, in what sequence. Then when would that solution be activated? Because people could be talking of restructuring for 20 years or 50 years. Is that not what we've been discussing since after Aburi? But if you don't put anything forward that will pin it down to when, we're in October of 2024 now, October 29th. Is there anybody else? Is there any group else, including the government, including anybody, including Patriot and all the people that are throwing this and that up here and there concerning this matter, who else has something that can put a time frame on when this problem that has lasted over 55 years will be solved? Again, Ninas has something in that 5-point proposition that identifies the problem clearly as a concession, identifies the solution clearly as the decommissioning of the concession, identified when that solution could be applied by insisting that we will not go to another election, another round of national election. We're not talking about off-season election of Edo or Ondo and Anambra in between, no, or one senatorial seat or the other. We're talking about the general elections in which the office of the president will be contested. And so we identify election as the renewal, as the mechanism by which that constitution that is the source of this problem is given fresh life every 4 years. And so we reason and we say that if this constitution is responsible for all of the calamities we live with, all of the woes befalling the land and the people, why do we have to go to renew and reinforce that constitution by another election? And so, if the decommissioning of that constitution is the solution to our problem, whether it is hunger or the corruption we see, or the insecurity that is ravaging, or the general failure of the country and the hopelessness of the people, if we truly reject that constitution, having identified it as the source of the problems, what will be the logic of going to election after election? Because the winners of that election, whether they be president or governor or senator, whatever else, will have to swear to defend and uphold that constitution. And therefore, the structures that are not working will remain in place. The false claim that we have submitted our sovereignties and our lands and our peoples into that union will remain in place, with our signature validating it. The falsehood that we made this constitution in all the rules it contains, in the 68 items of exclusive list it contains, in the structure of 36 states, 7 and so forth local government areas that have become 812 governments we must finance every month. All those rules will remain in place. The provisions that hand over the spare keys of the treasury to the heads of the executive branch will remain in place. The president can take all the money in the treasury like we see them taking now. The governors can take all the monies in the treasury like we see them taking now. Those things will remain in place. So where is the sense in going under that constitution to election? The one of 1999, let us concede that the soldiers played the civilian political elite outsmarted them more or less by being able to bring a constitution that nobody read before they conducted the election. We let that one go. But between that time, because we who are saying that this constitution cannot remain basis of Nigeria began to raise this issue within 3 weeks of the inauguration of that administration that was sworn in on the 29th of May in 1999. The first big event around the constitution that we identified to be a resurrection, a reincarnation of the 1979 constitution, which was commissioned by Murtala Mohammed in 1975 as victory charter from that war of genocide, and which makes development impossible. It arrested the development that was already going on in the regions. It coronated corruption because it offers immunity to the beneficiaries of grand corruption in black and white. It excluded responsibility to the citizen from government in section 606C. It has a provision that granted the immunity to all of those who shared the commonwealth among themselves in consequence of their victory in that war. Section 6, subsection 6D of that constitution. It is in soft copy. I'm sure all of us can click on our phone this night and go and see section 6, subsection 6D of that constitution that grants blanket immunity for every atrocity committed in the name of government between the 15th of January in 1966, when the first failed coup happened, and the 29th of May in 1999, 33 years. And it was in those 33 years that all the oil and gas assets of those who have it were distributed among the soldiers of fortune, the ones who are now the owners of oil blocks. They call it your land, my land, your water, my water, have become oil block. It was in that period that the Land Use Act was imposed, the Land Use Decree It was decree until they began to call it act after the 1999, which took everybody's land and confiscated same into the hands of people who do not, who should not, who should be buying it from the owners, who should be using it at the pleasure of the owners. It became asset that was taken away and shared out as they deem fit among themselves. All the solid minerals underneath, whether it was gold in Ogbomoso or iron or limestone in Benue or bitumen in Ondo, everything you find underneath, if such is it that even if today you go and buy some hectares of land in some place, the moment anything of value is found beneath the surface of that land, you've lost it, because that concession in its exclusive list sequesters all solid minerals to the government, to the federal government, not even the government, the one you and your governor will go and discuss. No, federal government. And who is that federal government? The federation collapsed at the time in 1966. The constitutions that federated us got toppled. The federation was buried in 1967, the day Yakubu Gowon fractured the 4 regions that were federating into 12 states. This same lie that this Gowon of a fellow at 90 is still repeating all over the place is part of what Nigeria, that is built on falsehood and lies, had used to guide itself into claiming that it was Ironsi that destroyed the Federal Foundation of Nigeria. No, Ironsi just found himself. He wasn't part of the coup. He was listed to die somehow, because he was the head of the army. He was between the coup of January 66 that Nzogo and Ifajuna and Ademoyega and those middle rank officers. That coup did not succeed. The people that were staging it did not get to government house. And who were the people that actually stopped them at the risk of their own lives? Ojukwu in Kano, commander 5th Battalion, Kano, was the closest to the epicenter, Nzogu's Kaduna. He was ready to take him on in battle. He sent him a message to say, you can't do this. If you insist, we'll march on you. He runs in Lagos, Igbo. The armory, they had, the plotters had hoped to take weapons from in Abeokuta. They could not access those weapons. They killed Colonel Unegbe, Igbo. So it was actually the Igbo that stopped the coup from succeeding. And in that confusion, the plotters had decapitated government. A number of principal officers of government had died. And then Hiroshi only said, okay, the 4 regions, he appointed military governors, which was how Ojukwu ended up in Enugu, Usman Katsina in Kaduna for northern region, and the Fajui in western region, with Ejo that went to Midwest. Then it was just a matter of providing some semblance of governance. The parliament has of course gone into disarray. There was neither the executive nor the legislative branch remained in any form that can provide. So it was just that temporary emergency measure that they passed a decree number 34, because there was no how you could have gotten the country going in one direction. To say, let us form a Supreme Military Council that will take over the functions of both the Prime Minister and the Parliament of the time until things stabilized. Hiroshi was still in the journey of going to talk to the people who were, calm down frayed nerves. He was on that trip of going from one part to the other that he came to Ibadan, and they came to kill him in July for something that was happening in January. The regions, the 4 governors remained, their assets, they remained their assets, and then it was in May of 1967, after all the meetings, including the one that happened in Aburi, failed to resolve the question of the union that had collapsed, that it became a 12 states. It was Gowon that fractured those 4 regions into 12 states by decree number 14. The reason we are touching on all of this is that we are tracing how we came to this constitution that we say must now go. We are tracing why we say if we don't do something, those who imposed it are very clear in their minds what they wanted to achieve, and they're achieving it. That's why we're slaves in our homeland. There's an emergency around it. The ones who agree with them from our parts to swear to defend and uphold that atrocity, you can see the benefits they are getting in trillions and billions and hundreds of millions. They can see the life of the people that they lure to elections every 4 years to go to renew, because from that 12 states that they fractured it into, they took over the economic assets of the regions and all the powers of the regions that were the owners of the sovereignties that were federating. That was how we landed by decree into these 68 items of exclusive list that tie us down, leg, hand, blindfold us, and shackle us. How can people with education and exposure allow their signature to sit in forgery at the base of such an instrument? Because they move very quickly from 12 states to 19 states that Murtala Mohammed added, fractured it into, all the way to 36. Then smuggling local government areas that they created indiscriminately for the purpose of sucking, just revenue sucking outlets. What development has come to those local governments now? And now we are building from the roof again by making it look like, if we give money directly to local government, development will be all over the place. This caliphate is going closer to taking your communities from you. That's what they are doing. Nobody knows what Bola Tinubu signed with them, for which they made him president in an election he didn't win. These are the things going on now. You saw on the floor of your National Assembly in Abuja that the debate was reintroduced for how to amend the constitution, the fraudulent constitution, to now make provision for Sharia formally inside 2024. And they are sitting there and debating it. Tomorrow they will say, oh, we did our best. That's how all the other laws they made that are injuring everybody came. Why should we allow that constitution to remain in place when we have something we can do? Back to the 5-point proposition that identifies the problem, identifies the solution, and has a time frame that will be imposed on everybody if our people will listen, if those who are living in this bondage will listen. That time frame is, we will not go to another election under this constitution that ruin our lives. Full stop. That's the remedy. Because the moment we say we won't go to election as a demonstration of our rejection of that constitution, because we can't be rejecting that constitution and going to vote for people who will govern us with it. Does it make any sense? Is it nuclear science to understand that all we need to do to save ourselves is to say that we won't go to another election? It's still 3 years away to 2027. And the reason we have pinned down this occurrence of this last week to beam the satellite on the foundation upon which we are building, in which the Gowon that led that genocide, of course, Murtala Mohammed was the front leg. He was the executioner. The Gowon that led that genocide has turned 90 now. The whole purpose of that war, say to keep Nigeria one, is a task that must be performed. That was the reigning what do they call it? Slogan of the time. That Nigeria had been kept one by force. That Nigeria had become unitary Nigeria because everything was now by decree and by force. That Nigeria is the one that's not working now. That Nigeria is the monster that is feeding on the blood of the constituents all over, whether it's in the Middle Belt, where that Gowon comes from. People are being slaughtered in numbers that you cannot find anywhere else in the world, even the countries at war. Hunger is visiting and ravaging throughout the land. The currency is falling. The economic, everything economy is in disarray, and every single thing is flowing from that constitution. Even people who are not lawyers, including Ngozi Okonjo, had to tell the lawyers in the land that it is the social contract that is, the reason for the social contract that has not been addressed is reason the country is upside down. Kingsley Moghalu, who was deputy governor in central bank here, who is exposed to economic matters even at the global level, also says so, that it is the constitution, is the constitutional foundation upon which we are building this economy that is the problem that has to be solved. Everything will fail except to solve it. How else are we to be told? How else is it to be explained? And so, the reason we are beaming this searchlight is that the constitution we have on the table now was the victory charter from that genocide, presided over by that Yakubu Gowon. Because by 1975, Murtala Mohammed, his partner in crime, commissioned by decree all of what became the 1979 constitution that Olusegun Obasanjo helped them to railroad into being, again by decree, carried forward in 1999, which they didn't let anybody know until they had done the election and sworn in their man. The same Obasanjo that imposed that constitution in 1979 was the one that had to come to revive it for them in 1999. And so, the P2B that goes congratulating Gowon at 90 and writing all kinds of nonsense, insulting the collective sensibilities of the Igbo that suffered in millions in terms of death from that genocide and all kinds of deprivation, including punitive economic measures that are still in place. Did anybody return the abandoned properties? Did anybody return the monies they seized, the Biafran currency? Did anybody reverse the indigenization decree they did? Have the glass ceilings been lifted across the armed forces in which the Igbo cannot be admitted into anything? So those things are there, and they've been made almost permanent by this constitution. If not that God had mercy and caused them to make the mistake of putting our signature on a document we had nothing to do with, how else were we going to be able to address this? And so we're inviting everybody who wants to come out of this mess. The other two items in our propositions you already know. Item 4 is the two-stage procedure for reworking the constitution. That is to say, election is not going on. Transition is in place of election. Transition that has to commence as soon as quickly as it can be. Every day we postpone the initiation of that transition. No less than 5,000 lives. No less than 5,000 lives is lost. Every day Nigeria does not climb down from this mountain of falsehood. The cost of keeping unitary Nigeria to feed that monster framed by that constitution is about 5,000 lives. Whether they die in accident of road, or they are kidnapped, or their business collapse and therefore their heart collapse, whatever kills them that shouldn't have killed them, pothole, accident, you go to hospital, the doctors are all on flight now. The economy is shut down. 10,000 filling stations, that's the petrol stations, are shutting down because people cannot, people are not buying anymore. They don't have the money to buy. And the drunken sailors in Abuja that call themselves government are rejoicing that consumption of petrol has come down from 60 million liters to 4 million liters. What does that tell you? People are now paralyzed. They are not moving around anymore. And the prices, half of private clinics have shut down because the doctors can no longer afford to, they don't have what they can't find the money to keep buying the food. Just yesterday, the use is the
Command of
is
course.
that extreme malnutrition that killed over 2 million children in Biafra when it was you know blockaded air, land, and sea by Paul and his co-travelers in that war of genocide. So the rest of Nigeria is upside down today on account of what had to be done to impose this constitution. And so for Peter Obi to turn around first in his campaign by saying that the constitution is not the problem with Nigeria, that it is leadership which is coming to provide if they vote him. It is an unpardonable offense because he is being dishonest. If we hadn't discussed this matter with him since 2012, I would be wondering whether is there nobody that can explain to him. But we have explained to him. He came public to say that Nigeria is like a vehicle with a knocked engine. So there's no doubt at all that he knows. But because he had to be president by all means, he goes on to say now that he turns around, makes a U-turn to say that constitution is not the problem. He went around in Kaduna, in Mina, in Kano, in Maiduguri to covenant with those who imposed this constitution on us that he will not touch that constitution if he became president. So what was Peter Obi going to change if he became president? Peter Obi was the first hope. Peter Obi was the first hope that young people were offered by Britain in the period leading to 2023 election. They were hoping that somehow this good man will emerge. He himself knew that he wasn't going to be any president. It was explained to him, we made broadcasts explaining why it could not be otherwise. They said this constitution goes down, we will not have anything of our vote determining what will happen. Because those who impose everything on us are in charge of all the institutions. Is it this Tinubu that has now confiscated whatever is left into his own pockets? The judiciary is pocketed, the INEC is pocketed, the police is pocketed, the army is pocketed, the entire justice system is pocketed, the entire financial system is pocketed. So how are you going to compete with him? And this same Peter Obi, who knows that this constitution is the problem, is still going around holding nocturnal meetings here and there of how they will combine and come and contest. If anybody decides to go to 2027 election, that person is only asking Tinubu to carry on. That person is only asking the killings to go on, the hunger to move on, the naira to go to where it's going now already. And so we're just saying what we must do now. What we must do now. This was how we were shouting from 2011 until 2015. Then Buhari happened to them. They thought they had seen the worst. From 2019, we began to shout again that if you go to 2023, you may not live to tell the story. Here we are, obedient. Where are the young people that were doing answers and bad governance on this discussion? Where is the labor union on this discussion? Where is the media on this discussion? Where are the church leaders on this discussion? Everybody is keeping quiet like people under a spell. And before you know it, the election will be next door. Whereas we ought to stand up in good time and say we will not go. There's no other thing that can happen than transition. And in that transition, there's only one business to be done, that you will go and negotiate your sovereignty. That's what we have to do. If we don't do it, Ninas will be here. If you refuse to do it, and you are looking for one Appian way or the other, that they will write constitution and bring for you from Abuja, or that your kinsman will become president instead of the one that is there now. What you see now is a child's play, because there's nothing happening that will give any kind of life back to that currency that is failing. There's nothing now in the horizon that can change anything in the positive. They are borrowing more and more and more. You don't know that is, you are in a pit. They are digging deeper and deeper because that's what they need to do to keep pretending. So if you want to take responsibility for your life, this is the time to do what Ninas has been inviting you to do, to say, we will not go to another election under this constitution. That is the only lifeline left for you. If you choose to argue with the signboard, if you choose to work with your ignorance, we'll be here. Maybe when sufficient numbers of people die, because the Bible says, my people perish for lack of knowledge. If we have become so foolish, so dumb, not to understand these very simple things, then perhaps we deserve to perish. And so, in winding up, let us just remind ourselves that it is possible to end this trauma. The state capture that has happened, the Fulani conquest agenda that is still being pursued, you are like one sandwich between two armed robbery gangs. But you have something that can stop the two gangs. Those who have captured the Nigerian state, sitting in Abuja and sharing your blood, and those who are coming from Mauritania and elsewhere to take over permanently from you as the new owners of your land, killing you off. It is the collapse of this constitution that will arrest the two. And we're not talking about 10 years or 2 years or 10 months. We are saying, if we stand up and do what Ninas asks us to do, this matter will be resolved in a matter of weeks from the time we say that we are not going to election, because there's no other thing that can happen when you say so. The constitution already lost legitimacy. The only reason they're still hanging on to it and pointing us at you and sharing the money they're sharing in Abuja every month is that you have acquiesced by keeping silent, by not doing what we ask you to do. Just say it. We'll not ask you to go and get gun. We have something bigger than gun that put Buhari to flight. Why are you not doing your part? And every time you turn around to say, oh, hunger is coming, Fulani herdsman is going. Let us use the brain that God gave to us to save ourselves from what has come upon us. And if that same Peter Obi that says constitution is not the problem, that has also turned around to congratulate the Gowon that presided over the genocide that led to this constitution, and we still have some of us who are hanging around thinking that he is an alternative to constitution, we have nothing else to tell you than to bid you farewell to your grave. We stop here.